Welcome to our webinar today. We are excited, and I think we have a really good topic to help people as their advisors to their clients today. As we're talking about Pinnacle, and you'll learn more about Pinnacle today, people and purpose. So a couple of their principles that they have related to business. So let's go through a few administrative things. I'll be the facilitator of today's session. My name is Tom Wadelton. I am a virtual CFO with Summit CPA Group. So I've got about 20 clients that I do consulting with and then act in the capacity of their CFO. In today's session, we do have one CPE credit for you. People do need to attend the entire 50 minutes and answer all 3 poll questions. So we'll have just 3 poll questions. Likely they won't be announced when I'm presenting those, so please watch your screen for those coming up. If you answer those, then you will get your CPE certificate emailed to you within the next week or so. You can't talk to us during the session today. People are muted, but you do have the question answer function, and we will watch that really closely and answer as many of the questions as we can. We usually can get through all those, so please do that. I will say in advance, the most common question that we get relates to slides. Do people have a copy of the slides now, and can they get them? So slides will be emailed out to people by tomorrow. There wasn't an advance copy of those slides sent out, so people can't have those now. So just in case that was going to be your question, you've gotten it answered. I mentioned that I work for Summit CPA Group, so let me tell you just a little bit about our firm. So our firm's a little bit over 20 years old. In 2004, we started providing CFO and back office services to companies, so kind of CAS 1 and moving into CAS 2, the advisory kinds of services. Back in 2013, we went fully distributed, ditched the office. Now we've got a lot of flexibility with the employees and then also our clients. We have clients all over the US, some outside the US, and the same with our team. As of last year, we joined Anders CPA and Advisors, a St. Louis-based top 100 firm. And so now we're combined with that group, and we're now a division of that firm, and very excited about that merger. Let me tell you a little bit about our speakers today, and then we'll go ahead and jump into our topic. So Ryan Giles is a Pinnacle guide. He's been guiding clients for the past 7 years doing that. Knowing that we have a CPA audience, I thought it'd be of interest to people that Ryan was actually a CFO of a company for 10 years, so has a lot of financial experience. Tom Barrett is a co-founder of Navigate the Journey. Also, he is a Pinnacle guide. Tom is a consultant in areas, and he actually has worked with our company for many years. And so I've gotten to know Tom over the years, and we really value his experience and are happy that they're going to be sharing this. So Tom, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the Pinnacle journey?
Yeah. So thanks, Tom. So in many ways, Pinnacle is the new kid on the block as it comes to business operating systems. So we're going to unpack that here today as we go. But in terms of, so what is Pinnacle? So first, it's a comprehensive business blueprint to scale any entrepreneurial business. So I think with comprehensive, I think one of the things we talk about at Pinnacle is the 100% solution. There are other operating systems out there that kind of model themselves more on an 80% solution. So through the kind of the depth and the breadth of the tools, I think it's comprehensive. And then also with key other partnerships that Pinnacle has, and being able to refer out, for instance, for outsourced financial CFO services, go to Summit and other things like that. So that's how I think we're comprehensive. Then second way to answer, what is Pinnacle, is we're customizable. Again, there's a lot of different business operating systems out there. Some are very sort of fixed and rigid, but our approach at Pinnacle is completely customizable. So as people will see, we do have, a model and a structure and a rollout process, but it's just completely customizable to wherever that unique business needs to start and to continue. And then I think the third aspect of Pinnacle is that, we have what we call an endless toolbox. So the Pinnacle community is really voracious in terms of going out there and finding the best tools, no matter where they're found, the best tools and constructs that are just going to work for our clients. So we have over 70 tools in that toolbox now. We'll be sharing some of those with you today. So Ryan, I don't know if you have anything to kind of add in terms of how you'd explain what Pinnacle is to folks.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me today. I have always liked to view it, at work, I had an IT company for 15 years, and at work every day, we had the available resources of everybody on the team. And when we cut payroll every couple of weeks, we were basically swapping a paycheck for all that energy, that human energy. The problem is so often in business, the energy is, it's going in every different direction. And so really the goal of any operating system, definitely the goal of Pinnacle, is to get all that human energy rolling in the same direction. And I think that's one of our big pushes, get everybody moving in the same direction, because we'll go faster, we'll hit our goals faster that way.
Makes a lot of sense. I'll go ahead and launch the first polling question as you're continuing, Tom.
Yep. So since many of you are again hearing about Pinnacle for the first time, I think it's kind of appropriate for us to sort of address, right, who is Pinnacle a great fit for? So few different characteristics. So first, privately held companies, typically venture-backed, probably don't work super well. Maybe private equity can, but ideally privately held. Second, and really important, is open to new ideas. So, I think with the whole business operating system choices out there, one challenge I think I would just put out there, sometimes the people, I feel like some kind of confuse the means with the end. And so with Pinnacle, even though it is another business operating system, we really are more concerned about the end, right? Having the entrepreneur run a successful business rather than just literally following Pinnacle, because it's kind of hard to do that. So just be, open to new ideas, or even adding on to the business operating system maybe you've been on for a while. Then a third kind of characteristic of a company that really is ideal for Pinnacle is just being transparent. So first, the owner/owners, key leaders, being open and honest with themselves, and then being willing to be transparent with their leadership team, and then ultimately the rest of the company. Fourth characteristic is just being coachable, right? We're all better versions of ourselves. Even Ryan and I, and Tom, I'm sure you too, as a business advisor and coach, right? We're all just better when we're coachable.
Yep.
And then that last characteristic in terms of Pinnacle being right for your business is just committed to growth. I mean, if you're wanting to stay the same size, this is not the webinar for you. So if you want something bigger and better for your company, Pinnacle is definitely a great place to look. So we can talk about why Pinnacle. Then one big idea for Pinnacle. So as a business operating system, we have a pretty lofty goal to be a category of one as business operating systems go. And again, just the whole approach and the endless toolbox, I think can help us get there. And so same with businesses, with end user companies that want to implement this as their operating system. If they truly want to be in a category of one in their industry, maybe their region, to really push themselves to think that way, break free of just being the same as all their competitors, why not go to be a category of one? And then one of the ways we really define success is that we believe if you implement this system, these tools over 5 years, you could 5x the value of the business. And just the back of the napkin way we validate that is if you grow revenue 2.5 times over the 5 years, so 20% a year, and then double profit margins, back in the napkin again, you can 5x the value of your business. So Ryan, do you have anything to add in terms of the the kind of the why and the what of Pinnacle?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. It's really, I think every company has a different goal. What do they want? And the beauty of it is whatever that goal is, we can help you reach it. I literally have a client, 3 employees in Louisiana, and they said, Ryan, we just want to keep up with inflation. Just growing a few percent a year, we're happy. Let's polish our processes, get a little more efficient. And then I've got a software company just up the road from them, and they say, we want to double this year. So the beauty is that these tools really can be used by you to reach whatever you want to reach. So it's fun, never a dull moment.
And I hope that people are listening from their own firm or their own organization perspective, but then also as we're advisors, there are lots of times where we work with companies where we've got some ideas or things, but then can we offer a solution to say what you really need as a business coach, and think of it in that kind of terms is where I think the real value can come for the accountants in the room.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of CPA firms, in the audience. And so, so one of the differences too with Pinnacle is it's very much an open source system. So, if with CPAs who want to just either fully incorporate Pinnacle into their practice, we could certainly, talk with you about that. We actually, in the Pinnacle community, we have a number of CPAs that use this as the what they offer their clients in a more formal way, or you can take pieces of it to supplement the more typical CPA financial advising.
Mm-hmm.
So, there is this broader context. So, I mentioned business operating systems. The ones on the screen are kind of we call them the 6 leading management blueprints. I think your audience probably be pretty familiar with all of those. I'm not going to go through them. I mean, we could probably take questions or probably refer to them, but in many ways, again, the ethos of Pinnacle is that, and actually I'm going to go to the next slide, because it's like, right, they're all, because if you line up all those great business operating systems, and again, all of those are great resources. If your audience or audience members have not gotten each of those books, definitely get them. They're all great. But when you line them up and you compare them, right, they're not all the same. Some are particularly really strong or have a lot of a certain thing. Others might be non-existent, or they could be weak or kind of middling. So there is sort of this issue, again, either as a business advisor yourself, or if you're implementing whatever business operating system, do you have the complete package? Do you have all the tools and constructs that you need? And that, again, is a driving force behind Pinnacle. So yeah, there is a book. Because the world needed another business book. So last year, Greg Cleary and Steve Prada wrote a great book as Pinnacle. So everything we talk about here today, this is one of the places people can go find out more information on it. But it is validated through a book.
Yeah, it is a really good book. I do like the other page, the best books, you put 6, and now in yours you only get 1. So people can really focus in on your book, as they should.
Yes. And then there's a Pinnacle model. So we call these, right, the 5 principles, right, the 5X your business. So today we're going to talk about people and purpose. And then we actually 2 more upcoming webinars where we're going to talk about playbooks and perform next time, and then profit on the 3rd and final Pinnacle webinar. So we're going to dive into people, show you some of the tools that are, some of these are different maybe than some other systems out there, but also just tools that are just really fundamental, right, again, to helping your clients or to helping your own business, right, really maximize and, like Brian said, optimize that human energy in your business. So in the model, right, so when you see people on the 3 red items underneath, we call those practices. So we like our alliteration, but we're going to talk about core values first. So so it's all about, right, discovering, right, what are, right, your true core values, because your core values that define your culture, what's really unique to your business. And ultimately, right, with the people principle as well, right, it's all about living out the Jim Collins principle of getting the right people on the bus, the right people in the right seats, and the wrong people off the bus. So Ryan, do you have any core value stories you want to share?
Many. I'll pick one, my favorite. And this actually comes from my pre-coaching days. Back when I was implementing, back in my own company, we hired a guy to help us implement this in our business. And we had a 1 interview hiring process. I know, horrible. We shouldn't have done that. But we were sort of doing this. We realized, we really need to start hiring a little bit slower, hiring a little bit faster. We really need to use core values. As the owner of an IT company, I focused on their technical competence, and I didn't focus on the cultural side much. And so we realized we needed to start interviewing better. We went to a 4-interview process, so we interviewed 4 times, and the first interview was always around core values. We did that for about a year, had phenomenal results, and one day I got a little desperate. I was looking for a very specific type of engineer, and I could only find one person that was even remotely qualified. So I broke my process. I hired him on 1 interview, and I mentioned core values, but I didn't really give them the time they deserved. So without a lot of discussion, I made him an offer that day. He accepted. I paid for him to move down into our area. And within the first few days, my ops manager came and she said, "Ryan, Darius isn't going to make it." Like, what do you mean? I haven't got the bill for paying for his moving yet. He's not going to make it. She said, "Ryan, he's not the guy. He's not a core value fit." And I said, "Okay, well, give me a few days to kind of think about what I'm going to do." Well, over the next few days, Darius comes knocking on my door. And he said, Ryan, you mentioned core values once when we talked, and I just thought that was just something you did. I didn't realize when I got here, though, everybody really lives them. Like, it's a real thing. He said, and I don't share a lot of these, and I really feel like I don't belong. And I said, well, what do you think? He said, my brother lives in Atlanta. I'm thinking maybe just moving up there. Haven't even unpacked all the boxes. Like, do you mind? And I'm like, let me help you pack up. And so I think the moral of that story is, if we're using core values right, if we're really living them, then we'll prevent bad hires. We'll prevent almost all the bad hires because we're weeding out those that don't fit during the interview process. But the second best case scenario is if someone does get through the cracks, then they feel so uncomfortable. They just feel like a fish out of water, and they kind of self-select out. So I think if we're living these and using them right, it definitely helps us get to the right people. In fact, our research shows that 82% of companies have problems with people. In fact, they say people issues are their number one or number two issue. So I think this goes a long way towards solving that.
Yeah, and I think, again, for the audience, pretty much every company has core values, but I think the question you've got to ask yourself is that, do we have the right core values? Are these really true of us, authentic to us? And also, do they differentiate your company from others? Because and really, the essence of strategy, right, is just differentiation, and it should go all the way to core values. So if your core values are too bland and like your competitors, it's probably a sign you have.
Got to lose Tom there for a second. You still there, Ryan?
Oh, I'm still here.
Yep.
I'll give you one more quick core value story if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I had a tech company in Mississippi, and we were going through some exercises, and they felt like they had the word right. They said, okay, we want something around teamwork. We want something around, no jerks allowed. We want something about we're hardworking. They love those ideas. But at the end of the day, I said, are these our core values? And they said, we like the ideas, but the words just don't feel like us. And so we started going around talking about what each of those meant. And one of the guys said, hey, hardworking. It reminds me of the movie Rocky. Rocky, I just saw it the other night on TV, and he won because he outworked the competition. And he was just the hardest working guy in the room. And so I said, well, hey, that could be one of our core values, Rocky. And somebody else said, I saw this movie Miracle on Ice, and it was about this team, and they came together and worked as a team, and they won. Before the day was over, every core value was tied back to a movie. For No Jerks Allowed, one of them had seen a movie, Mean Girls. So they basically had movie posters that represented each core value, and it was super, like, even all these years later, I still remember them. They were memorable. Which I think is one of the big secrets of core values. It's got to be something that people remember, and not just in their head. They have to get that in their heart. So
that is a great example. I thought that was going the wrong direction when you started naming movies. So that's really cool that was the way people could visualize what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. So in living out Jim Collins's adage that all companies need to follow. So the whole with the making sure, so with the core values, right, that's should the person be on the bus, and then in terms of the seats, so our approach at Pinnacle, we just call it functional accountability chart. So when guys like Ryan and I are working with a client, so we just wipe the slate clean, in terms of asking that leadership team, what is the the structure that you need to get to the next level. And so, one of the approaches that we take that I think is helpful is that we typically set it up and say, hey, there's really three major functions for every business. First is get work, second is do work, and third is get paid, right? And so that usually gets teams really thinking in the right way about how do we do each of those three activities of the business, right, in a way that is going to be best for us, and letting go of the past, thinking of the future. How can we do it more efficiently and effectively? And then I think a few other things too, before I'll turn it over to Ryan, is one of the things with when you work up a functional accountability chart. So you could definitely do the whole top down, but I think what I've found, increasingly so, is that I think there's a lot of sensitivity with that, like what that says. And so we've gotten some creative ways of even doing an accountability chart like the one on the screen, where you can put that visionary and second in command kind of in a yin and yang in the center, and then emanate out your major functions from there. and that can, help if there's any, sensitivity about too much top-down structure in the organization. So, yeah, so those are some of the ways in which we help, again, get the overall right structure for the business and then start to define each seat. And so all those bullet points are basically responsibilities, accountabilities that the person that will sit in that seat, needs to just do really well. And we typically also add some KPIs also to each seat.
Tom, might you comment? One of the places where I've seen a lot of value for the smaller clients is where there's not a different person in every single box, where some people might be in multiple boxes. Could you comment on that for some of the smaller companies where how they could work through that?
Yeah, great. Yeah, so that's really good, Tom. So yeah, I think so. Yeah, so there's the reality with smaller companies that you're likely going to have to be in more than one seat. Mm-hmm. But one of the things though about actually fleshing out those accountabilities is, first of all, even the person that they're in 3 seats. Well, okay, you've probably got a little harder than you would if you just had 1 seat, because you got to keep 3 major parts of the business in mind as you're doing your work, so that the accountability chart itself should actually help with that. And then the last thing I'll say is that the accountability chart, one of the analogies I like to use with a team when we're creating it is that it should be like a child's ill-fitting coat, right? If you live in the northern part of the country, you don't want to buy winter clothes for your kids that fit them just right? You want them to grow into that over time. And I'm sure as a CFO, you like the sound of this too, right? You don't want to overhire, but what sketching out those kind of almost like future seats. So say if a person again is in 3 seats, it's like, okay, if we get to a certain revenue level or size, whatever, then okay, well, which of these 3 seats that you're sitting in, which is the first one that we would hire? We've already got it created, so we know where the person would slot in, and then you'd get to just be in 2 seats.
Yeah. I've found that valuable. And I know, Tom, you were in the room when they were defining the director of accounting role that Jamie is in now. And prior to that, people don't know our role, but Adam was in that role and got to a point of saying, when we get to this size, we actually need a director of accounting, and I'll have to focus on certain things and they will focus on others. And they went through that in the picture and really talked about it, and then got to that size and implemented it, which just seems so logical when they went through and did it. I think it was a really good exercise they went through. So Ryan, where in your process does this fit? I mean, is this in sort of all the engagements that you do where you're going through and saying, let's go ahead and get this accountability chart in place?
Without a doubt, it's normally the very first day we meet for the full session. It's one of the first things we tackle. Oh dear. Fire alarm here.
You've been fired here.
But no, this is one of the first things that we cover because it answers so many questions. In fact, I was with a team and they had about 20 people. They built out their accountability chart. They had some homework to finish building it out. We came together for the second meeting and they said, well, we have 40 seats. There's only 20 people. And we looked and one of the owners was in 5 seats. And his reaction was, he was a little bit frustrated. I said, no, this is great news. I said, I'm guessing you feel like you don't have enough time. And he said, you're exactly right. I said, okay, well, now we know why. Let's figure out how to get you out of some of these seats. And that's really the point of the EMIT. Like if you find yourself in all these seats, start working yourself out of the bottom seat, replacing yourself. For example, in my one of my previous companies, I was a salesperson. Not my favorite thing to do. So I said, okay, well, my first rock, the first 90 days was to be able to afford a salesperson. So I had to go make a few sales to afford to hire somebody to take that position away. So sure enough, 3 months later, I'm in 1 fewer seat. So I love that. And back to a point Tom mentioned earlier about the KPIs. We always say that, this accountability chart is really, it's got your obsessions and your metrics. And so the bullet points are like, what are the things that you want that person to obsess over every day? Like this is what you want them waking up and going to bed thinking about, the main parts of their job. And then end it with a bullet point or 2 on the metrics that they're responsible for. And so many of my clients, and you guys probably know this better than I do, so many of my clients just don't get finance very well. And so we'll break down a super simple budget. I'm like, okay, we have all the revenue coming in. Somebody on this accountability chart should own that. Who should own that? Oh, it's our sales leader. Okay, great. So So that's our sales leader. Now, what's after that? Oh, well, we take out our cost of goods sold. Okay. Who can own that? Oh, that's probably our ops manager. Okay, great. If I'm a service company, the ops manager can affect that. So that means gross margin is owned by the ops manager as well. Okay, and then we have our SG&A. Oh, that's finance, our finance leader. Okay, and then that leads our net income. So that's our second in command. So it's really cool to take each of those major line items on the budget and map it back to one of these seats. And that's a great KPI to start with when you're thinking about who should own what on the accountability chart.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Awesome. So here, I'm going to move us on. So in Pinnacle, in terms of how we assess people, we use a tool called a talent assessment. And of all the ways to assess people in terms of right person, right seat, this is by far my favorite. So hopefully this is one of the takeaways people are going to have from this webinar if they've never seen it before. So here's how it works. So again, you could do this very quickly and very efficiently, either yourself or your entire team, or you could do this with your leadership team and assess everybody else in the company. So you just list out, say team member John Anderson, making it up here. What's John's culture fit, right? Given those core values that we've defined, say he's an 8 out of 10. You could evaluate him against each of your core values separately, or just give him one overall core value fit. And then productivity wise, on a 1 to 10 scale, how productive is John relative to what's expected of him? And then we can also quickly add in quick kind of coaching pointers, right? How can John get better, right? What does he need to do? You can do that for all of your team. So again, it's a super powerful way to quickly cut to the chase. The other big advantage with the talent assessment approach is that it allows you to actually get a visual representation of your team, right? Because, productivity, right, is the x-axis, and then the culture fit is on the y-axis. So the ideal is that, as many people as possible, ideally all of your people, would be in that A category at that top right? They're an 8 plus in productivity and an 8 plus in culture fit. And then, the reality is, right, that most likely not everybody is. And in some ways that's okay. So especially, again, with the coaching and development aspect of this, if they can develop over time, or you can develop them over time to get into that A category, that's certainly fine. Then we have some other categories here that I think are super helpful. So the people that fall in the B zone are the campers. So they're usually great human beings. You love them as a core value fit, but their productivity really is lacking. And I think this representation really helps bring that dynamic out. It's like, oh, now I get why, person X really like them, but like I knew there's always something, and it's really the productivity part of the equation. The C category, that's really easy. People that are just not cutting it, productivity or core value wise. And then that bottom right quadrant, they're called cranks. So, and the last few years, this has been with the tight labor market. This is the category that's probably the one that you might want to look the other way, but cause issues, and certainly in the long run. So high productivity, but not a culture fit, probably eating away at your culture. Probably other people likely are leaving because of those folks. So Ryan, do you have any stories about the talent assessment?
Yeah, I was about to say I 100% agree. I think the BC, the cranks, those are the ones. I've heard somebody call them a terrorist before. Those are the ones you got to watch out for, because they trick you into thinking they're very productive. I had a guy like that on one of my teams once, and my ops manager kept coming, Ryan, we need to get rid of Mike. We need to get rid of Mike. And I was just seeing dollar signs because he was so effective, so efficient. I thought he was effective. He was very efficient. What I didn't realize is that he was a drain. He was the culture cancer. And he was really just pulling the rest of the team down. When I finally, a year later, I'm embarrassed to say a year later, let her walk through the coaching process, ended up coaching him out of the company. I literally had clients calling me and thanking me. And of course, he was very mad. Mike was very mad when it happened. But I bumped into him a year later on an airplane in Newark, New Jersey, and I thought he was going to hug me. He had lost 100 pounds. He'd always wanted to travel. Now he had a job with Microsoft traveling. Turns out all along he had been a good fit for somebody, just not a good fit for him. And so it turned out to be the best thing for the company and the best thing for him. And I think the real beauty on this graph on the left, that's really the the money shot, because when you can see all your team on there at once, it's really eye-opening. Another interesting point is that a team's never going to surpass their leader. So if you've got a leader of that team or that department that's a 7-8 or a 6-5, guess what? Their team's never going to exceed them. They will be the lid. They will be the cap. And so this is just another clear visualization of how you need your leaders growing, and you also need your people to make sure they're leveled up.
Yeah, and just to pick up on what Ryan just said, so basically the way to do that, actually, so again, if you plot your whole team, plot the whole company, the next step is, so if you were to draw a line from kind of 0-0 all the way at the bottom left, all the way up to the 10-10, right, top right, and then rate your own leadership, right? Are you a 7? Are you a 9? Are you a 5? And you're probably, like Ryan said, going to find a pretty high correlation to the level that your team is at compared to your leadership.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
yeah, I had one experience with a client where they took someone through, but it was interesting. It was the owner's uncle worked at the company, and they said they had been complaining about this person for 5 years, the role, everything else. And the guide said, let's take him through this assessment. And in about 15 minutes, they decided it was time for him to leave the company. And it was so good because it just made it so clear, because they ended up saying he's not very productive and he's a really poor culture fit. And all of a sudden they were sort of staring at the data like, we can't ignore this any longer. And to me, they probably don't all happen like that, but it was fascinating the way it got them all around. Let's make a decision.
Yep. Very, very clarifying. So Ryan, you want to talk about coaching conversations?
Sure. I love this topic. So we believe that, your coaching conversations should happen quarterly. What is the coaching conversation? That's your chance to get one-on-one with each of your direct reports. And you might say, Ryan, that's a lot of people. I was talking to a new client just last week, and they said, yeah, they have 40 direct reports. I'm like, hold on. You can't have 40 direct reports. You can't be a good manager of 40 people. And so that's a good topic. If somebody has 40 direct reports, we need to talk. But I have clients all the time, and they say, oh, Ryan, we're doing our quarterly. We're doing our coaching conversations every quarter, one-on-one. I'm like, great. When's the last time you did them? Oh, we did them in September. I'm like, that's not 90 days ago. So yes, these really need to be quarterly, because this is that one-on-one chance. We always say people don't quit jobs, they quit their bosses. And this is your chance to get one-on-one with your people to really find out what they're thinking. If somebody quits and you're surprised by it, I don't think you did your job as a manager. And so this is your chance to talk to them, find out, who they are, build that relationship, and really just kind of get the dialogue open. So what I always say, as an agenda, started off with just a check-in, how you doing, talk about productivity, talk about culture. And this really is something that should be fun. If you dread these, you're probably not doing them right. But it will seem like the first few times you do it, like, I feel like I'm doing all the talking. It shouldn't feel that way. Like, let it be a dialogue, let it be a two-way. And if you're really brave, at the end, we've got a tool you can use to let them kind of assess you, a leadership assessment. So I always like to do that. Say, okay, let's spend the first part of this. We're going to talk about you and, how are you doing? How can I help you? Remember that you're a leader. I know we talk about servant leadership a lot, and it's almost a cliche these days, but your job as the leader of that department is to support them and make sure they have what they need to do their jobs well. So the first half of the conversation, I like to spend, hey, how can I help you? What do you need? Let's kind of go through this. Are you living the core values? Are you really meeting our productivity expectations? And then, hey, how am I doing as your leader, as your manager? And so I love to talk about it in that sense. And again, the agenda, just a little check-in. How you doing? Again, it's your chance to get to know them a little personally. Hey, kids in soccer right now, how are they doing? Oh, I didn't know you were coaching T-ball. Then again, talk about culture and productivity. Hey, anything stopping you? Is there any resource you need or anything that's blocking you from doing, a great job? I remember once, and this really changed our whole culture. I had a few of our guys say, Ryan, I just feel like I'm getting stuck. Our clients are putting in service requests and tickets asking for our help. We're sending them a quote because, they may need a new printer or a new monitor or a new mouse or a new keyboard. And most of these items are not expensive, but it's taking them a long time to get them approved. So we have people that are losing a lot of productivity. So we started a policy. We said, if you can solve any problem for $100, you have permission to solve it, no questions asked. And it kind of empowered our people to start solving problems for. But that came out of some of these conversations. And then lastly, I like to end it with, how are you doing with your goals? We call them rocks. How are you doing with your rocks this quarter? And I used to like to do mine around middle of the quarter. That way, if they were falling behind a little bit, I could say, okay, how do we help get you back on track? And I want them thinking a little bit about the future. I want them thinking, hey, what do you think your goal should be next quarter? Just to kind of get them looking ahead a bit. And so that was just a really simple agenda for what this quarterly conversation could look like. Again, it's your chance one-on-one to meet with each of your people. And then I love this because, I was meeting with a client in Houston a while back, and every time we met, every 90 days, they were talking about Brandy. I'm like, okay, guys, after the third meeting, after we've been talking about her for 9 months, we are not going to be talking about her the next time I come back. And so we sat down and said, what's the problem? So we did the talent assessment. She was way, way, way down there in the C range, culture and productivity, but especially on culture. They said, Ryan, the problem is we have one client that's a huge amount of our revenue, and she's the only person that really interfaces with them. So we can't do anything. I'm like, well, hold on. It was the summertime. I said, she's going on vacation. We need somebody to cover for her anyway. Let's get one of our new employees that she doesn't have a grudge against yet, get them to kind of shadow her, to kind of learn the client. We need that anyway. That's just good common sense. And then after that, we can start addressing, coaching some of these issues. So that's what happened. We got the new guy in there, kind of shadowed her. She went on vacation. When she came back, they started addressing some of these issues. The first time they brought them up, she quit. Well, thankfully, They had a backup, so the client was happy. They solved their culture problem, and the next time we were together, it wasn't an issue anymore. So sometimes that happens. But what normally happens, I had a guy, Steven, that was one of my engineers back in the day, and loved Steven to death. He had been with us about 6 years. He just couldn't get to work on time to save his life. It just seemed like he was late every day. And we let it slide for a long time, but finally we realized after we started using operating systems, we realized we've got to get serious about this. We're hiring new people. We have a huddle every morning, and at the huddle, he's late. And so our new people realize they don't have to be on time either. So half the team's missing the huddle. So it was time for the quarterly conversation. We pulled Steven in. I said, Steven, I said, man, this is a problem. He said, Ryan, I know. I'm sorry. I totally admit it's my fault. I don't know what to do. I said, well, I'm here to help. I said, but I'm not here to solve it for you. So let's go ahead and meet. Let's meet again in a week. And when we meet, I want you to come back with a plan for how you're going to solve this problem. And so if he came back with anything, I would have helped him. My goal, if it was written on the back of a bar napkin, I will help him polish it and make it pretty. But he had to show up for something. So at the first meeting, he kind of got strike one. At that second meeting a week later, if he would have showed up with nothing, that would have been strike two. But in all my years of doing this, people always showed up with something. In this case, Steven shocked me. He showed up with, a beautifully formatted plan. He had bought a new cell phone, downloaded a new alarm clock app. His mom was going to start calling him at 6:30 every morning. As I was reading through it, I kind of laughed. I'm like, you are a 40-year-old grown man. Your mom's got to call you every morning at 6:30. But then I said, you know what? If it helps, I'll get my mom to call you too.
Yeah.
And so at that second meeting, we set out expectations. We said, okay, we're going to meet again in a month. So if we're a week into it now, we're around day 8. A month from now is about day 38. So we're going to meet on day 38. Go ahead and schedule that meeting now. And at that meeting, there will be 21 working days between this meeting and that. You can only be late one day. If you're late more than one day, that's strike two. So you set some super clear expectations, and then he's off to the races. And I'm happy to say that at that meeting, 38 days, he had not missed a day being late at all. He had not been late at all. And so process was done, solved, move on, see you again in 90 days. Now, once or twice, I'd see people that did get a strike two at that meeting. And normally, if they got a strike two at that meeting, they realized you were serious and they quit before that strike three meeting, which would be 30 days after that, day 68. Only had one employee ever make it all the way through to day 68. That was the guy, Mike, I mentioned earlier. So you can solve any people issue in 90 days or less if you just follow that little coaching conversation schedule.
Great.
Really good examples.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. So so those are just some nuggets for, again, how to optimize all that human energy, all that big, probably most likely your single biggest, expense line item, your people. So definitely make sure you're utilizing these kinds of tools, again, to get, that appropriate return on your biggest expense. So I'm going to move us on here to talking about the second principle for today. We call that purpose. So 3 big principles underneath that: vision, strategy, and alignment. So we're going to walk you through some of these tools here. And actually, I think what I'm going to do too, kind of looking at the clock, I'm going to like focus on the ones that are probably maybe a little different, or we have a different take. So I think pretty much every strategic planning, business operating system, right, has some sort of mission or purpose statement. Generally, they can be stated either, with an external articulation, like the examples on the screen, or and probably in my experience, probably maybe, I don't know, maybe at 1/10 of the time, a company decides, no, we need to have an internal way that we define our purpose, and that's fine too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be external, but again, make sure that you have a why, and that again, it's actually, it does connect back to the people principle, because your people need to know that why, right? Why should they come to work, right? What's their part in the greater good that this company is doing. So then next is, again, really another key element, right, in any strategy, vision clarity is, right, where are we going long term, right? So some people call this a BHAG, right? What's the top of that business mountain that you're climbing? And sometimes this comes really quickly and easily. Some companies, they do have a hard time articulating it, but again, that's a sign that you need to keep working on it. So so these are just some examples, kind of in the ideal, not too long, not too short, enough information that people, you could pretty much tangibly know whether or not you've achieved this within a certain time frame.
Mm-hmm. Tom, could you define BHAG, since you mentioned the acronym?
So that's a Jim Collins term. It's big, hairy, audacious goal. So that would also known as vision, right?
Yep.
Your long-term target or goal.
Yep.
So, and then one other. So we have quite a few elements in terms of defining vision. So, but one other key one is, right, where's the business going to be in 3 years? And there's this whole idea of, right, a vivid vision, right? Paint a picture of what the business will feel like if you were to kind of reach out and tangibly grab it, right? Or what I say with my clients when we're creating this is that we're going to get in a magical time machine right now. We're going to travel 3 years into the future. Tell me what must be true about the business in 3 short years. And, it's everything from those, financial KPIs to then those bullet points of, this is what must be true about the business as we're on our way to that long-term vision. So Ryan, do you have anything to add here in terms of what I shared with these slides?
No, I think you're exactly right. I had a client in Oregon once, and they were between 2 mountain ranges, and they said, Ryan, we just can't grow. Every year we have one competitor, we swap a client or two, but we just can't grow. And so I pushed them a little bit on their 3 year. In fact, at the end of the day, I thought maybe I pushed them too much. But at the end of the day, I said, is this your vision or mine? Like, I want you to be able to see it. And they thought for a minute. They said, no, we can see it. We don't know how we're going to get there yet, but we can see it. And the owner piped up and said, again, I don't know how we're going to get there, but I know we can't get there if I'm the one owning sales. So he said, my rock this quarter has to be find someone to own sales. Long story short, 90 days later, we got back together. He said, guys, we found the perfect guy, lives in the East Coast, but wants to move out west. He starts next week. They hit their 3 year milestone in 15 months because they were super focused so they could see it. And so I think that's the power there. If you can visualize this stuff, it's almost like magic how well it works.
Yeah, and of course the other part of the magic here is there's the Mark Twain quote, or at least it gets attributed to him, that I would have written you a shorter letter if I'd had more time. And so whereas if you have a 5-page 3 year milestone document, right, people are just lost in the details. So the power really is in boiling it down, just identifying what's most important. And people, because you can unpack all those bullet points, and they're usually very, very meaningful, right, for that team. So another part of purpose, right, is strategy. So a number of tools we've got here. So one key one, right, is identifying who's your ideal customer, and sometimes, right, it's more than one, right? You might have different industries, and so, but yeah, really understanding that demographic, psychographic, geographic, again, boil down, right? Is the leadership team on the same page about who that ideal customer is? And, because that affects everything, right? How you do operations, how you do marketing, how you sell, how you hire, all of that. And you're not just taking, customers, whoever just wants to cut you a check. And then, what's that brand message that you're sending to the world? Brand promise is the ideal. And, you can see some of those examples there on the screen. And again, it should be true, right? It shouldn't just be some slogan that's sort of invented out of thin air. Like, if you're familiar with BMWs, right, that's really true of them, right? That like those cars, the driving experience is definitely better than the vast majority. And that rings true.
Mm-hmm. Okay, ready to go on to the next?
Yeah. Here's a tool that's not in a lot of other operating systems. I think that's definitely worth people's time checking out in the book. So one phrase strategy. So the idea here is, because we asked this of all of our clients, right? Can you state your strategy simply? And is it leading to higher margins and really even industry leading margins? And so typically the answer to that question is no and no, right? Leadership teams can't state a simple strategy in an aligned way, and then people don't really know what the strategy is to drive higher margins. And so like with Southwest Airlines, it's all about, right, asset utilization, right? Turning those airplanes around, flying them 1 or 2 times more per day than their competitors. And so everything that they do is going to be about, right, wheels up, getting those airplanes off the ground. Or what IKEA, right, when they had, their whole realization that why pay to ship and store empty air, right? So when you ship and store assembled furniture, right, that's a lot of expense. But if, I know it's annoying for us as a consumer, but it's great for their business model when it's all in a flat pack, and we got to do all the hard work, but people still shop there. Mm-hmm. That's a great one. Another I think really great nugget that's in the Pinnacle book and system is mind share. So, when we say search, right, everybody knows Google or Venti, everybody knows Starbucks. But even if, you're not a big multinational like that, I think one thing we would encourage everybody for their own company or for clients you're working with is, everybody's got a sales process, everybody's got a customer relations process, whatever. Have you named it? Like, and why not? Especially if you're a service business. So product companies have no problem, naming their products, and a lot of times they have to do that, with trademarks and copyright and all that. Service businesses, we typically just don't name anything. And there's a lot of power when we do. So Ryan, do you have anything on that?
No, I think you nailed it. I think that it also does go to help our employees understand too. I've seen some epiphanies when employees really get it as well.
Yep. So, so speaking of employees getting it, right? So that really leads to our next point here. So, clarify the vision, right? Where are we going long-term, kind of how we're going to get there, mile markers along the way, strategy, how are we unique and different, kind of like that internal strategy, but also then, with your customers and your branding. And then that third piece is alignment, right? Yeah. So first getting clear with your leadership team, and then continually rolling that out to everybody else in the business is just a key thing, because it's not a one and done. You've got to continually do this, use it in hiring and onboarding. So we call it the strategic vision and execution plan, SVEP. That's a 2-page document where we put all of this. Again, it's all in the Pinnacle book. And you can, when you're doing your quarterly state of the company addresses or updates, whatever you want to call it, because you can obviously come up with your own name. This is where, again, you can create this cadence. Ideally, after you do quarterly and annual planning, we talk about the history, where we've been, where we're now, right? How we did with rocks, updates in the company, where we're going next quarter, rocks, goals for the year, things like that, Q&A, and conclude. And it's a great way, to make sure that everybody's rowing in the same direction.
And Tom, am I right? This is often something that the Pinnacle guides would do, meeting with leadership teams on a quarterly basis and helping them facilitate that process.
Yeah. So, whether or not you use an outside guide or not, I would say with a system like Pinnacle, like it's really essential that you're meeting, that leadership team is meeting once a quarter for your kind of classic quarterly and annual planning. Because I think if your planning and execution periods and your accountability periods are really beyond 90 days, it starts to get really diffuse. So I think, well, I won't speak for Ryan, but I mean, I'm almost at the point where, I won't work with a client that if they're not willing to actually do those 90-day sprints, it's really where the magic is. I know, Ryan, what's your take on that?
Oh, yes, 100%. And I think if you really want to get serious about this, I love it when teams do their quarterly state of the company, like the day after we meet. So I'll go in and meet with them, all day on a Friday, and they've already got their state of the company set up for Monday. And then so many companies, especially now in this, this crazy partially work remote part, the work from home environment we have now, it's just harder to build culture. So I think communication is more important than ever. And I think this is a piece that's often overlooked as a great tool to increase and improve that communication, that quarterly state of the company.
Yeah, and then there's one other tool that we don't have a slide for, but I would people look at get the book. One other tool we've got in the strategy part of Pinnacle is the flywheel. So it's another Jim Collins concept, and that is often one of the most valuable tools that we do. And so that's all about creating this visual representation of what are the 5 to 6 key activities, that if you get these right, they reinforce each other, and it's literally like a flywheel where at the beginning the momentum is slow, but once we get it going, we actually have it's going to spin faster because each of these areas of the business is going really well. And it should also, show us, how are we actually generating profit that we can reinvest back into the next turn of the flywheel. And another last plug on creating a flywheel for an entrepreneurial business is that in terms of, setting goals for the year, rocks for the quarter, budgeting decisions, all those kinds of things become just even clearer when you're really clear on what your flywheel is. So I know we're kind of coming towards the end here. So, this is an offer. I'm certainly willing to send anybody. We call it the Pinnacle baseline assessment. So it's just 20 simple multiple choice questions. If you want to assess, where your business is at relative to kinds of things we talked about today, it's a really easy way to do that. So I can send that out to anybody. Happy to debrief them too on that. Good.
And since I mentioned, if people are listening and think that a client would have interest in Pinnacle Guides, you've got your contact information there for that as well, right, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. We don't have any additional questions that we had sitting out there. So thank you guys very much. This is really helpful. I really appreciate those two. And as you mentioned, Tom, we've got additional webinars that are going to be going through the other 2 Ps. So people really wanted to get sort of the entire, all the Ps covered in that they could in these multiple webinars.
Yeah, we have to talk even faster than we talked. So
you guys did a great job. I think we had some really good stories and some really good content. Thank you guys very much. Today was a really valuable session.
Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Ryan.
Yep. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks for having us.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.